and talk about, and you've already fought, no one would know it, but you keep it a secret. You're for raising the minimum wage to $15 an hour. You know what? It's a really good idea. You know why it's a really good idea? Because it doesn't cost jobs. They have economists that have looked at this every way you can. And when you raise the minimum wage and say, well, it's only X people get the minimum wage. Yes, but there's X million people that get 20% above the minimum wage. And if you raise it, it'll go up. No, that's not a new idea, James. That's, Democratic populism. Mark Penn is not going to like that. Well, who gives a shit what Mark Penn likes or doesn't like? Try it on a poll. Try it on a poll. Because the generational thievery that has occurred in this country is criminality of the first order. And we keep wondering why these young people aren't coming home to the Democrats, or why blacks are not coming home to the Democrats. Because Democratic messaging is full of shit. That's why. And talk about cost of living. And we're going to help deal with this. And don't talk about fucking Gaza and student loans. That's so out. That guy Delavolpe is pretty good. Give him 15 issues. You know what the number 14 and 15 issue were total? Student debt in Gaza. I forgot which order it's in. Steal Trump's medical records from his internist. And where are these medical records? Prove that you're fair. Ask them and keep asking them. And the same thing for the Biden campaign, because you and I are not stupid. We know why he stole the records. All right? Let me put it this way. We have a strong suspicion is he stole the records because he had the goddamn clap.
Boy, oh boy, oh boy, oh boy, oh boy. I gotta tell you guys, I know that we talk about this almost every single day, but that's because it's true. And it's actually getting worse every single day for Democrats. Okay, I'm so serious, right? Every day it seems as if Biden's chances of getting reelected become slimmer and slimmer and slimmer. In fact, again, there's a new report that came out today talking about how Democrats, the Biden administration, are in full-blown panic mode because everything that they're trying to do is not working. It's not working. Right? So now you have Democrat strategists like James Carville, the guy you guys saw at the beginning of this video, saying all types of crazy stuff, right? Attacking Democrats because their strategies are failing. This guy was like vouching for a $15 an hour minimum wage. He was telling Democrats that they need to get Trump's medical records to prove that he has syphilis, right? Saying all types of stuff because the desperation is real. It's very real, okay? The reality is, in my opinion, I don't think that the Biden administration is going to be able to change anything unless miraculously the young thoughts of America come out and vote for him in droves like they voted for Democrats in 2022, or people all of a sudden feel like the economy is in much better shape, okay? I don't think that either of those two things are going to happen, but who knows, okay? Stranger things happen before in our elections. What I do know is that, again, it's not just the economy. It's not just domestic issues that could tank Biden's campaign. But when you look at Biden and his need to perform in very specific swing states like Michigan and Wisconsin, those states are not just going to come down to domestic issues. It's also going to come down to international issues and foreign conflicts, unfortunately. And one of the conflicts that we cannot forget about, because it really is hurting Joe Biden, it is the Achilles heel of the Democrat Party, which is the conflict between Israel and Gaza. Israel seems hell-bent on going into Rafah and basically destroying the place, okay, in their efforts to eliminate Hamas. And that is resulting in more civilian casualties, which will radicalize the Democrat Party and their base to the point where they will just essentially refuse to vote for Joe Biden, or so it seems, because Rashida Tlaib essentially held a rally in Michigan, her state, in which she said that, hey, we're going to make Joe Biden pay come November at the polls, strongly implying that she's not going to vote for him and she's going to rally people not to vote for him. Take a look.
Y'all, welcome. Welcome to the most beautiful, blackest city in the country, the city of Detroit. remind you all, but Detroit, we birthed movements, not just labor movements. We birthed movements on environmental justice, on women's rights, and so much more. So welcome, gain strength from this amazing, beautiful black city that raised me. I don't need to tell you that you're on the right side. I don't need to. But I'll be damned if I wait 10 years before they apologize to all of you for doing what was right at this moment. Each year, our country, and I say our country because it is our country, sends billions of dollars to maintain an apartheid government and support the ongoing ethnic cleansing of Palestinians. It is disgraceful that the Biden administration and my colleagues in Congress continue to smear them for protesting to save lives, no matter faith or ethnicity. It is cowardly. But we're not going to forget in November, are we? The International Court of Justice just ruled that the Israeli government must stop its invasion of Rafah. But President Biden says what's happening in Gaza is not a genocide. Where's your red line, President Biden? You all, every single bullet, every single gun, every single weapon, bombs that we send is a sacrifice of our own schools here at home. Many of which, when I go into the schools, have garbage bags over their drinking fountains because they don't have clean water. President Biden, I hope you hear us loud and clear. Attacking the authority of the International Criminal Court and interfering in the legal process is nothing more than an attempt to prevent the genocidal maniac Netanyahu and his senior Israeli officials from being held accountable for those crimes against humanity. You are an enabler, President Biden. But wait, you know when my colleagues are outraged? They're outraged over the protest on college campuses in our country. They're more outraged than that, than the atrocities happening right now on the ground in Palestine, the war crimes. Y'all, there's no universities in Gaza. We all know this. We say it over and over again. And now, if they get their way, they're going to silence the universities here at home.
Yeah, so you see that, you heard that. Okay, fascinating stuff. Okay, they are rallying against Joe Biden because of his stance when it comes to Israel and Gaza. Now, regardless of what you think about that conflict, I find it to be interesting how every time Joe Biden says, hey, this is my red line, don't cross the red line when it comes to dealing with either our allies or our enemies, they seem to not care and straight up ignore Joe Biden's warnings. Like, for example, Joe Biden's red line to Russia was don't go into Ukraine, right? Putin decided to go into Ukraine anyways. Biden's red line to Iran was not to attack Israel. Iran attacked Israel anyways. Biden's red line to Israel, Netanyahu, was don't go into Rafah. Netanyahu, they decided to go into Rafah anyways. It seems as if nobody respects Joe Biden on the world stage. Again, I was talking about this yesterday when Don Lemon talked about how Joe Biden is so liked, right? He's a statesman. He's a diplomat. Foreign leaders like him. And I said, well, there's a difference between like and respect, right? There's a big difference, okay? They might like Joe, but don't nobody respect Joe, okay? Because best believe, if Trump says, this is our red line, don't cross it or else, none of those individuals, whether it be Yahoo, whether it be the leader of Iran, or whether it be Putin, none of those people would have crossed that red line, okay? That's how you know you're respected. Biden's not respected because every time he says don't do something, right, people do it anyways, right? Our enemies do it anyways. Doesn't matter what he says because nobody fears Biden, okay? So, again, this is how you end up in a situation like this where you have people like Rashida Tlaib literally rallying people in Michigan, a swing state, to essentially vote against Joe Biden. That's what it sounds like to me, okay? That's what it sounds like to me. Now, who knows? Will they actually really follow through on it? I don't know, but I don't think that anything's going to change that conflict. I don't think anything's going to change that conflict. Doesn't matter who you vote for. My message to those people is that, listen, you should just vote based off domestic issues. Voting based off this Israel-Gaza conflict, I think is just dumb, okay? Because both sides of the political aisle, the elite in both parties, are pro-Israel, right? They're very pro-Israel, and that's just what it is, right? That's just as American as apple pie, so it seems, right? I mean, you got Nikki Haley literally in Israel, basically sounding like she ran for president just so she can help Israel, and then telling us one of the biggest flaws in our country is that we don't care about Israel enough, okay? Or that maybe Democrats and Republicans don't tell the American people why they should care about Israel enough. No, I'm not making this up. This is what she said. Take a look.
I ran because I thought I could do a better job. But at the end of the day, it is what it is. It's not personal for me. This is about America. It's about a strong America. It's about a strong Israel. It's about having the backs of our friends. It's about holding our enemies to account. We had a strong America. That was the goal. The goal was to make sure we knew who our friends were and we knew who our enemies were. And I think the reason that he and I worked together well during that time was because he let me do my job, which was to call out our enemies, but we never forgot our friends, which is why we stood with Israel. And all you have to do is look at the fact that, you know, he moved the embassy from Tel Aviv to Jerusalem and acknowledged the truth. He allowed me to defund UNRWA. When we went and tried to go and condemn Hamas and name them a terrorist organization, he let me put that resolution forward. The last thing I want to do is come to Israel and talk about American politics. What I do want to do is come to Israel and make sure that the American people see what I see, hear what I hear, and understand the one flaw that I will say of Republicans and Democrats in America is they're not telling Americans why they should care about Israel. They're not telling Americans why they should care about Ukraine. They're just making the decision and allowing Americans to hear it in sound bites. That's not, Americans are smart. When you give them the information, when you tell them why they need to care, they do.
Yeah, so I find it fascinating that Nikki Haley doesn't want to talk about American politics in Israel, but she loves talking about Israeli politics in America, okay? And I cannot believe this woman. This woman is literally saying that Democrats and Republicans don't tell the American people why they should care about Israel and Ukraine enough, right? The amount of delusion is just astronomical, right? I actually think the biggest flaw among Republicans and Democrats is that they personally don't care about America enough, right? Like, I think I've seen Nikki Haley talk more about Israel than the border, okay? And they don't tell the American people why you should care more about America than Israel or Ukraine, right? Because I care more about America than both of those two countries combined, to be quite honest with you, right? But that's unfortunately not the case for our politicians, whether they be on the right, who seem to, all they care about is Israel. And some of them also care about Ukraine, right? The Mitt Romney types, okay? Or on the left, where all they care about is Ukraine and Gaza, right? The far leftists, okay? The Democrats also, the establishment Democrats care about Israel too. But I'm just saying, at least when it comes to the left, though, again, when it comes to the left, this Israel-Gaza conflict, again, I think is going to be the Achilles heel, right? I think this is what's really going to break the Democrat Party. And I don't think that the state of the economy plus what is happening overseas is going to be enough to save Joe Biden. And again, this is why they're in full-blown panic mode, according to reports.
So if you've been on social media in the last 10 or 15 minutes, you've seen a story that's getting a huge amount of buzz right now. Politico is reporting there is a, quote, full-blown freakout among Democrats over President Biden's reelection prospects. CNN's Harry Etten is here with me now. So there's that, Harry, but there is something in the polling that's a feature that Democrats might be happy about.
Yeah, you know, you spoke about it.
This is how bad it is, right? It's so bad that CNN is trying to find some positive light for Joe Biden, right? That's how bad it is. But again, internally, apparently, again, they're freaking out, okay? They really believe that, hey, nothing they're doing is working and the Biden administration is just tanking. And, I mean, that's just the reality of the situation. I personally believe that, again, there's nothing they can do to really change this.
I believe last week a little bit, and it's essentially this. Right now we're looking at polls of registered voters. But, of course, you have likely voters and those who will actually turn out and vote. And if you look at the registered voters, Donald Trump's ahead by an average of 2 points. But look at likely voters right now. What we see in those polls, those same exact polls, but among likely voters, is a tie. And this is a very unusual pattern because normally what happens is the broader universe of all registered voters is more favorable to Democrats than those folks who actually vote. So back in 2020, Joe Biden won registered voters, or led amongst them in the post-election polls, by 5 points. He, of course, only won by 4. Go back to 2012. What do we see? Among all registered voters, we saw Barack Obama would have won that group by 6 points, but of course he only won by 4. So this is a very different thing that we see going on here. When you look at all registered voters, you get actually a more favorable environment for Donald Trump than if you look at those folks who are actually likely to turn out and vote.
Again, this is a flip from what we've seen historically. Are there any states this matters more than others?
Well, listen, here's the thing. Even if it's tied, right, among likely voters or actual voters, that's still a W for a Republican, right? Because, again, if the national vote is 50-50, in all likelihood, via the Electoral College, the Republican will win. Okay, so, again, this is CNN trying to find a glimmer of hope for Joe Biden, right? This is the best thing they got, right? The best thing they got for Joe Biden is a tie scenario in one poll, right? Just one poll out of many polls showing Trump leading.
Yeah, so, you know, we're looking nationally, but of course things are determined in the Electoral College. And one state where the polls have consistently shown, the New York Times Siena College poll, I've also seen a little bit in our CNN poll when I dug into the crosstabs a little bit, where we see this massive jump from registered voters. Look at this, Donald Trump at 49%, Joe Biden at 42%. Go to likely voters, look at this, a well within the margin of error contest in which Joe Biden actually scores 47% to Donald Trump's 46%. He is doing significantly better among likely voters in Michigan than among registered voters. And part of the belief for that reason, John, is because Michigan has very lenient voter registration laws, a lot of automatic voter registration in the state of Michigan.
So that explains Michigan. Overall, what might be contributing to this trend?
Yeah, so, you know, we've spoken.
So here's the thing about Michigan. Again, this is going to be a state that has a significant Muslim population. Hopefully they don't show up to vote for Joe Biden, right? If they decide to sit it out, that will significantly hurt Joe Biden's chances, right? In a state like that, where, again, as you can see here, you know, in the likely voter contest, it's effectively tied because it's in the margin of error, right? So it's effectively really tied. But among registered voters, Trump is up big time, right? 7 points, which I believe is outside the margin of error. So I personally think that, you know, in states like Michigan, where the race is so close, in Wisconsin, again, it's a big deal, right? I mean, Rashida Tlaib holding that rally against Joe Biden is actually a really big deal, because if they actually choose to punish Joe Biden for not going along with what they want when it comes to this Israel-Gaza conflict, then that could be the difference between Biden or Trump winning that state.
This trend.
Yeah, so, you know, we've spoken a ton about Joe Biden's problem with young voters, right? Look at the 2020 results. We see Joe Biden in those exit polls and in the post-election survey from the Pew Research Center, winning young voters, those under the age of 30, by 25 points. Right now in the polls, look at that. Joe Biden's up by just a single percentage point. My goodness gracious, what a decline for Joe Biden. But there is, of course, an age reversal going on here that I don't think gets spoken about nearly enough, which is in those exit polls in that Pew Research Center post-election survey, Donald Trump by 5. Now we have Joe Biden by 6 points. And, of course, older Americans are much more likely to vote. So this is an age reversal I think Joe Biden will take.
No, you want
that's wild to me, right? I'm not even sure I can really believe this one, right? Where you have older voters that are more likely to vote Joe Biden by 6 points. Now, again, that could explain why when you look at likely voters, the margins are so much closer, because older voters are more likely to vote. But, you know, this is why I say that when it comes to Trump's VP pick, he has to keep in mind, again, the states that really, really, really matter, the states where he's struggling, aka like, you know, barely leading Biden, but consistently leading Biden the most. Pennsylvania, Michigan, Wisconsin, those Rust Belt states, he definitely needs to focus heavily on those states. And, you know, I'm just very surprised when it comes to these older voters being more pro-Biden. That, to me, that was a little bit of a funky number to me.
These are the voters who show up, generally speaking, but that's a huge swing among younger voters.
It's something historic, John.
All right, Harriet, and thank you very much.
Thank you.
Kate?
Let's talk about this. Joining us right now is Republican Congressman Byron Donalds from Florida. Congressman, thanks for coming in. What Harry and John were talking about, New York Times also had an analysis of this. It's kind of the registered voters versus the likely voters conundrum, I'm calling it. And as the New York Times kind of put it, as part of their analysis, it says, to an extent that hasn't been true in the New York Times Siena College polling in the last 8 years, disengaged voters are driving the overall polling results and the storyline about the election. They are the disengaged are the low turnout voters. They're the voters that are less likely to actually decide to show up and vote on election day. With that in mind, how much does that, kind of this conundrum, if you will, concern you regarding Donald Trump, his campaign efforts, him trying to win re-election, him trying to win election once again, with really kind of turning those voters out?
Well, first of all, it's good to be with you this morning. I'm not really too concerned. Here's why. This election is really going to come down to a choice between two presidents, the 45th, the 46th. And I think that when you have a lot of voters registered, likely, whatever the case might be, when they really take stock of the job both of these men have done, they're going to sit there and say Donald Trump was a significantly better president. It's not even close. Look at every metric. Look what's happening around the world. The world was safer. Inflation was lower. Our border was secure. Everything that truly matters in the lives of the American people was better under Donald Trump when he was president. So at the end of the day, I think that's what's going to really shake out at the only poll that matters on November 5th.
One thing we learned this morning is that the Biden campaign is going to be getting some help from three former police officers, three police officers who were there on January 6th, names that have become very well known for speaking out about what happened to them on January 6th, how they defended the Capitol on January 6th. And the Biden campaign is going to be using them, getting help from them in swing states to, in their view, speak about the threat that Donald Trump poses to democracy in 2024. I mean, they carry an interesting story, an interesting personal story. How do you counter that?
I counter that with the fact that Joe Biden has been a disastrous president, and he's been a threat to democracy. Check this out. He has suppressed the free speech of the American people during COVID-19. He forced members of our military to take the COVID-19 vaccine when they did not want to, and now that all the facts are out, they destroyed their military careers. He's ignored the Supreme Court not once but twice when it comes to the student loan bailout. He has ignored federal law, leaving our borders massively open. So if you're going to talk about who's a threat to democracy, it's without a question Joe Biden has been that threat. Violations of separation of powers, violations of the First Amendment, just because he wanted to get his way. That is not good for an American president who just uses and changes the law based upon his own whim, his own desires, his own politics. That is wrong. And so I think if you're going to try to bring out what happened on January 6th versus the 4 years of Joe Biden's presidency, Joe Biden is the one who's not been protecting our institutions. He's not been protecting our Constitution. He's actually been a major detriment to the very pillars of our nation.
This is part.
Yeah. So, what I would have added to that is that let's keep in mind, you want to talk about political violence. Look at all the left-wing activists committing acts of political violence every year, right? 1 year is BLM, and then the next year is Roe v. Wade, and the next year after that is the pro-Palestinian people. There's political violence all the time from Democrats, okay? They're the cause of most political violence in this country. Also, on top of that, they're election deniers, okay? I would have threw in all of that on top of that. But, regardless, not looking good for Democrats. I mean, they're in full-blown panic mode, and hey, I mean, I understand, I get it. I mean, I personally think that with the way things are going, I just don't see how the Biden campaign can recover. This is why they're getting so desperate, and they're rolling out these police officers, these Capitol police officers, to campaign in swing states. I mean, one of the guys couldn't even win an election in his own district, right? He lost an election in his district, okay? And you rolling this guy out to campaign for you? If you're one of these people in one of these states and you let one of these police officers sway your vote, I don't know what to tell you, right? I'm not sure you should be voting, okay? I'm just saying none of these guys should be affecting anybody's vote. But again, this is how desperate the Biden administration has gotten. They're doing this. They're showing up to Trump's trials now, right? They're challenging Trump to debates. They're doing all types of stuff in order to save Biden's dying campaign. So let me know what you guys think. Make sure you like, comment, and subscribe. Most importantly, share a Black conservative perspective. Peace.